सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः.
Welcome. Valentine's Day questions. I have good relationships. All of my needs are met. And I'm on a spiritual path. There's nothing wrong with my life, but sometimes I still feel sad inside. Why? What can I do? Well, first of all, realize that emotions are not the enemy. It's not about how can I remove this emotion or that emotion, or why do I feel that, how to get rid of this emotion. Emotions are quite literally a pattern of activity in the brain. They may feel heart-wrenching, like it's sort of at the core of who we are. But they're actually not. It's actually a pattern, a chemical and an electrical pattern in our brain. They can stick metal probes into the brain. The brain doesn't actually have any pain sensors, so they can do all of these sorts of tests and literally stick probes in the brain and make you feel happy, make you feel sad, make you cry, make you feel angry, make you sexually excited. I mean, they can sort of stimulate all of these different emotions, feelings that we have. We also know that simple chemicals do that. Anybody who comes home at night feeling sad and depressed and drowns their sorrows in a couple of shots of some alcoholic beverage or glasses of an alcoholic beverage or some drugs, they know. That's why they turn to it. The emotion I'm having isn't something I'm enjoying, therefore let me chemically alter it. New chemicals, boom, new emotions. So it's important at first to realize it's not who you are. It's a pattern in the brain and can be due to anything ranging literally from what you've eaten that day, the air you've breathed, how much you slept or didn't sleep, vitamin, mineral balances. All of these things have a massive impact on our emotions. It also can be due to what we speak about as sanskaras, past impressions. Sort of grooves in the brain. Neurologically, we speak about them as neuronal networks or patterning. Spiritually, we talk about them as sanskaras, literally, impressions, grooves, the way you flow. Like we know the river bed that flows in the valley through the mountains? Well, when the water comes, that's the bed it flows in. Because for thousands of years, the water, the river, has cut a valley through the mountains. It's an impression, a literal physical impression in the mountains. So when the river flows, when the rain comes, that's where the water goes, in that river bed. In the same way in our brains, we develop these grooves, these patterns, these habits. That's sort of how our chemistry flows. And so when you notice something like sadness, notice it. If it keeps coming back over and over again, maybe it's there to tell you something. But it's not always bad. You know, a lot of times we've got this sort of fear of, oh my God, I'm sad. You know, people cry and everybody else rushes to, dry their eyes. Oh, come here. Let me dry your eyes for you. As though somehow tears were bad. As though sadness were bad. None of it's bad. It's windows into different aspects of ourselves. And so don't try to push any of it away. But the question to ask ourselves is, what is its presence telling me? And as we grow on our spiritual path, interestingly, you think it's all just about joy and bliss, and in many cases it is. But the truth is that as we break out of what I call this illusion of separation, this myth of separation, into an awareness of our oneness, you actually find that the suffering of others impacts you in a way that it didn't before. So whereas before maybe the sadness was just about, oh, my best friend was mean to me today, or the guy I like ignored me, or, something in my circle of friends or social life or drama happened that made me sad. But as we grow spiritually, sometimes that which brings sadness is a tree that's been cut down that you walk by. Or even that you don't walk by, but that you feel in your heart. I know a lot of people, really deeply spiritually awake people, who shed a lot of tears about the fires in the Amazon, the fires in Australia. I mean, we're connected. And so sadness in and of itself is not bad. Nothing is bad. The spiritual path is a path of stopping that judgment, stopping that sense of good badness, and just allowing what isness. But here's what's really beautiful about the emotions. If I don't hook my drama into them, they dissipate very quickly. So there may be a moment of sadness. And I may know what caused it, I may not know what caused it. A very sad person may have walked by me and I energetically picked it up. We're energetic beings. And I may have just been sort of energetically overcome by the despair of the person who walked by me. Surprise, it's not all always about us. It's not always about my drama. Sometimes it may actually be about my connection to someone else. But if I don't hook a drama into it, it dissipates very, very quickly, because then I walk by a flower that has opened its petals to the sun and that is just filled with such joy that suddenly I am feeling the joy of the flower. And then suddenly there's a child, and the child is just exuberant in bliss. And now I'm experiencing also the bliss of the child. And then maybe something within me wells up. And this is what it's like to be an energetic being in a world of energy. The problem comes when I hook my drama into it. When it's, oh, I'm sad, my life, why does nothing go right for me? When I give it a story. And then I get attached to the story, and I get attached to the drama, and I convince myself that I am the story. And so there's sadness. And instead of just being able to sit with that, and even if there are tears, okay. Don't always know why there are tears. Sometimes there just are. Sometimes it rains when it's not the rainy season. It's nature. It just sometimes happens. And that's okay. But when our thinking mind tries to give it a story, oh, I must be crying because. Oh, I must be sad because. This person, that person, this situation. So if you find that in general, you're actually really living a deeply spiritual life, but you just sometimes have waves of emotions that come, that's okay. You know, when waves in the ocean come, those who know how to swim, what do? They dive in, right? When you're in the ocean and a wave is coming, only young kids or those who haven't swum before try to outrun the wave. They're the ones you see who turn around and go, ah, and they run back to the shore, and of course the wave beats them there, knocks them over, and they come up sputtering for breath. But anyone who has swum, who knows how to swim, doesn't try to outrun a wave. The wave comes and they turn around, they face it, they dive in. The wave goes one way, they come out on the other side. So as these waves come, just drop deep. It's on the surface. It's energetic. A wind blows. It impacts us not just on the hairs on our skin, but in our hearts, in our brains, in our collective consciousness. Let it happen and dive deep. And the more anchored you stay deeply, the less impacted you are by the constant fluctuation of the waves, by every single person you pass on the road or stand next to in the subway or who talks to you. Or every, Facebook post someone sends you or thing that you see online. Otherwise, it's a constant kind of up and downness. Anchor deep. But if you find that the sadness is deep, if you feel like I have everything, but I still have this deep sadness, that's when you need to ask yourself, okay, what is it I really have and what is it I don't have? And have I tried to fill myself with external appeasements? Have I tried to buy my own happiness, buy my own peace, buy my own sense of fulfillment with possessions or titles or careers or relationships or luxury? Because we all know that doesn't work. And so sometimes if that sadness is deep in the face of having it all, then that sadness is really the truth of you kind of pulling on you. Like a kid standing there pulling on the mom's skirt, like trying to get her attention. Mom, mom. Sometimes that sadness is that truth pulling on you. Hey, listen to me. This isn't what it's about. Hey, all the possessions, all the money, all the prestige, all the glory. I'm not full. I'm not full from that. Give me some real love, some real connection, some real truth, some real awareness. And this is where it's so important to really anchor yourself in awareness. Because that's what actually gives you the truth. My favorite story about this is that psychological study that they did, that I share it actually quite frequently, but it bears sharing frequently, of the basketball game where the scientists, the researchers, had their subjects who are smart students, college students, grad school students, watch a basketball game, 6-minute basketball game. Red team, white team. And they told them that the task was count how many baskets each team makes. So at the end of the experiment, they give them each a piece of paper and it says, how many baskets did the white team make? So they all get it right. It was only a 6-minute game. Basketball is an easy sport to follow and watch. How many baskets did the red team make? Again, they all get it right. And then the third question, did you notice anything else? Now, more than 50% of the students said no. And it turns out, as in almost all of the psych experiments, what they said it was about is not what it's about. It's never what they say it's about. There's always something else it's about that they don't tell you. And really what this experiment was about had nothing to do with basketball and everything to do with awareness and attention. And it turns out that halfway through the basketball game, in the middle of the court, this huge gorilla came onto the court and proceeded to dance center court right in front of the camera for about 30 seconds and then exited the court. Now, 50% of the students, more than that, missed it. And, it's not that they fell asleep or they sneezed or they stopped paying attention, because they actually got all of the baskets right. So it's not an issue of attention. And what they realized is something very, very simple. It all has to do with the instructions. It's not what they were told to look for. They were told, count the baskets. So they did. And they did it fantastically, perfectly. If at the beginning the researchers say, oh, and by the way, don't miss the gorilla, nobody misses it. Or even if they say, oh, and by the way, this isn't really what it's about, but some surprise is going to happen, pay attention, they don't miss it. And this is the most potent and poignant, for me, metaphor for our lives. As we're raised, we're given these instructions. Get a good education, get a good degree, get a good job, make a bunch of money, get married, have kids, build a white picket fence around your house, get a good job, send the kids to good school. These are your instructions. Make sure the neighbors respect you. Make sure that, you're popular and everybody looks at you with great esteem. This is what matters. And so we do that. We follow instructions very well. And at some point in our lives, tragically not usually till the end of it or till some something happens. At some point, we wonder, was that it? Was there not anything else? Did I miss something? And just like in the study, it's the same thing in life. That's not what it's about. Now, the difference is in our lives, people aren't purposely trying to trick us. They're not conducting an experiment. And it doesn't last only 6 minutes, it lasts our whole lives. Which means that the impact is much more detrimental. Missing a gorilla is not the end of the world. Missing the point of your life is. And so this is where sometimes that little inner something that kind of keeps nagging at you is that sense of, this isn't what it's all about. This isn't what it's all about. Keep your eyes open, don't miss it. It doesn't mean don't do those things. Do those things, keep doing them, no problem. But realize that's not what it's about and keep your eyes open. Not just your physical eyes. Because what it is about isn't necessarily going to come in the form of a dancing gorilla. You've got to keep the inner eyes open. And the inner ears open. And the inner intelligence open. To actually experience what it's about. Which is experiencing the truth of who you are. Experiencing that self, that boundless, infinite love, truth, stillness and energy, that exquisite seeming irony, but not really an irony when you experience it, of complete stillness and divine energy at the same time. That is the universe. That is the experience of that. That Om of the universe. And so we stay connected to find it. So if you've got that sadness that's nagging at you, and it keeps nagging, and keeps nagging, it might be worth spending some time to look at it and to see what it's trying to tell you. Might be the trees, might be the rivers, might be the connection with the people in the world, but it may also be that you're missing something. So allow yourself to look at it and see it. Are there any questions that anyone here has? Yes. And then you over here.
Namaste, namaste, namaste. I may have asked this question before, and it's also relevant to what you just spoke. My question is, what is happiness and how could we achieve it? As we know, today is Valentine's Day, and everybody is supposed to have love and happiness. Unfortunately, the last few days I have been to hell. Sorry for using the strong word. And it's so painful for me, and I want to try to recover from it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, wonderful. So, that happiness is something that comes only from within. And I actually want to take this back to you because as you've been with us for the last several days, we've had the beautiful opportunity to journey together with you from a state of 43 years of misery and despair into beautiful and exquisite happiness, and then into hell, and then we'll journey together back into happiness. But what happens for us is that when our minds kick in, because as I was saying either last night or the night before, you can't be happy tomorrow or yesterday. You can only be happy in the present moment. This whole illusion of pursuing happiness is actually creating the problems. It's convinced us that happiness is something to be pursued, which means by definition it's not what I have now. And so we spend our lives pursuing happiness and never finding it. We become like the dog chasing its own tail. And so the only way into happiness is inside. And yet, as the mind kicks in its patterns, in its yesterday and tomorrow, in its last year and next year, in its my childhood and oh my God, my future, it pulls us out of it. And so there's a few different techniques to keep us experiencing that joy of who we are. The first is just to be conscious, to be aware, mindful every minute, every moment of the breath. Because you cannot be in your thinking mind and be deep, connected to the breath, to the heart, simultaneously. And so if you can unhook your attention and your awareness from the spiraling of the mind, the dramas of the mind, the expectations and frustrations, why did this one say this, why didn't you do this, what about you, rather than that. If you can stay connected to your heart, stay connected to your breath, and ask yourself in this moment, right here, right now, everything is okay, right? Right here, right now, in this breath, not in your thinking mind, right here, right now, in this breath. You're good. But then the habits come in, the patterns come in. We go back onto autopilot, back into those grooves we've created of stress, of jealousy, of victims, of whatever our story may be, our thing may be. We get provoked, someone says something, someone does something, we've got an expectation, they don't fulfill it, we lose ourselves. Come back to your heart. And whatever it is that's brought you into hell, forgive them. Forgive them. And let it go. Not because whatever they've done is okay. And I don't mean necessarily the they of just the last 3 days. The hell may be they of the past, but now that I'm remembering again, it's being triggered again, it's coming up again. But whatever it is that has happened in my life that creates the patterns of hell that I live in, We have to forgive them. You have to let it go. Because otherwise, you keep creating that hell for yourself over and over and over again. They may have created it for you once, but now you keep creating it consciously, voluntarily. And that is like saying that just because someone was horrible at one time, maybe it was yesterday, maybe it was 43 years ago, but just because of that, just because that person or those people lied, cheated, abused, betrayed, harmed, that now you need to keep abusing yourself every minute of every hour of every day. No. You deserve to be free. And that happiness is only going to come when you are free. If I say to you all right now, who's happy to be here right now? Raise your hand. Okay, good. We all are. But if I say to Ratanji back there, close and lock that door, nobody's leaving. Suddenly, the collective happiness will plummet. Suddenly, all we'll start thinking about is, oh my God, I got to get out of here. Now, I was very happy here because I was free to be here. But same place, same situation, if I simply lock the door and lock you in and announce nobody's leaving, that is enough to turn heaven to hell. Beautiful experience to hellish experience. Simply the deprivation of freedom. And so you cannot be happy if you are not free. Last meals for people on death row, right? They always give them this last meal to eat whatever they want. And I've always wondered, does that really taste good? Really? Knowing that they're locked up, they've been locked up in many cases for decades, knowing that within 10, 12 hours they're going to be killed. Seriously, does pizza taste good? Seriously, is the brain actually giving any kind of joy of any kind of meaningful level? I don't think so. I've never read or heard of any prisoner saying, wow, that was great. I'm so happy. Now I can die. That meal, fantastic. Now I'm happy. You cannot be happy unless you are free. And so as long as that which someone or people or the universe did to us, because sometimes it may not be a person, sometimes we may blame God, we may blame the universe. But that which was done unto us, or that which we were deprived of, that has created our hell, until and unless I can forgive them and move on, your happiness will always be as temporary and shallow as somebody living on death row getting a pizza. You have to allow yourself freedom. Doesn't matter who they are. Doesn't matter what happened. Doesn't matter what they did, you did. This is the beautiful teaching of Mother Ganga. she flows and she flows and she flows and she flows. Water that is stagnant festers. That's where diseases come from. When water stops flowing, that's when the water develops bacteria. We drink it, we get sick. Mosquitoes breed in it, they bite us, we get sick. When the flow is stagnant, it breeds disease. And similarly within us, when we grab hold of something in our lives and hold on to it with this death grip, we stagnate, and it creates dis-ease. Sometimes literally physical diseases, if not just emotionally, mentally, a state of dis-ease. So we have to let it go. You cannot rewind the past, whatever it is. And again, remember, that doesn't mean it's okay. But the beautiful thing is, we're not the karmic police. God is not relying on us to hold a grudge so that someone gets their due. Whatever people do, they'll get the karmic result of that. We don't need to hold on to it to remind God, remember, they're due for something. This guy did this to me. We don't need to hold on. Your responsibility to yourself in this lifetime is to be free. And so, on Valentine's Day, can you love yourself? Can you give yourself this gift? If a doctor told you you had a tumor in you that was going to kill you, and the operation was going to be not fun, a bit uncomfortable, maybe slightly painful, but eventually you'd heal and move on, would you allow the tumor to kill you, or would you have the operation? What would you do? It's a hard question? Well, think about it. Doctor tells you you've got a tumor. If you allow it to stay in your body, it's going to kill you. But the doctor can remove it fully and successfully. You just have to be prepared to deal with the temporary pain and discomfort that any operation is going to have. But you've got a 0% chance of risk of death. There's no regular operation in the world that can guarantee you that, but this operation can. 0 risk of death. 0 risk of complications. Would you do the operation, or would you let the tumor kill you? It's easy to answer. Good. So what's the answer? Yes, you'd have the operation. Good. So that's exactly what you are being offered. This hell that you are creating for yourself is that tumor in you, and it's going to kill you. It's stolen 43 years of your life already. You told us that the other night. How many more years do you want to give it? But there's an operation. But you have to be prepared to let go of this tumor. You have to be prepared to let it go. And to stop identifying as the home of the tumor, the one with the tumor. You've come to this sacred place. Let that sacred surgery happen. Give it to Mother Ganga. And yeah, there'll be a temporary experience of discomfort, because when something has occupied so much of you for so long, grudges, pain, misery, there's the sense of like, who am I now? But into that space, grace flows. You know, in physics, they teach us the universe hates a vacuum, right? That's why you create a low pressure situation. Pressure's going to come in. In the same way, when you remove something that's taking up too much space, into that space flows grace. So that same law about the universe hating a vacuum, it applies spiritually as well. You clear yourself of that tumor, grace is going to flow in. All the space you can create in you will be filled with grace. But you have to be prepared to let it go. Because you know where this is taking you. You've done it. You've done it over and over again. Every time you have a thought of misery, a thought of jealousy, a thought of anger, a thought of regret, a thought of that memory, you know where it goes. You've gotten on that plane how many times? Probably 1,000,000 times in 43 years. You know where it ends. It ends in hell. You've taken that trip. Now you need to say enough. I'm not getting on that plane anymore. Let it pass. When those thoughts come, because they'll come for a while. It's a pattern. It's a sanskara. It's a groove. Those thoughts will come. They'll try to drag you back. But it's like if you're in the airport and a plane is boarding, it's not your flight, and it's going somewhere you don't want to go. You're not going to get on just because the plane's at the gate. Just because they're screaming, last call, last call. You'll be like, yeah, thanks, no problem, go ahead. Close the door, I'm not going. Not my flight. In the same way, when those thoughts come, because they are vehicles that take you places. Every time you have that same thought of the memory, of the pain, of the anger, it's a vehicle. And we know its destination. You told us in your question, hell. Destination, hell. Why do you keep getting on that plane? Use your free will. You've come here for a reason. The universe has brought you here. Mother Ganga has brought you here. She's brought you here because she wants your tumor. She's begging you for it. Give it to her. Give it to her. You've carried it long enough. Okay? Good. Beautiful. Yes.
Namaste, my name is Priyanka Joshi. I have a very simple question. How to be consistent in life with the purest form of whatever you do in your life?
To stay consistent.
With the purest form.
Yes. Priyanka, are you here tomorrow?
I'm flying back tomorrow.
Okay.
Afternoon.
No problem. Then we'll take it tonight. So, you stay consistent in your highest, purest form by continuing to remind yourself what that is. That highest, purest form is the truth of who you are. When you lose that connection is when you lose the purity. And so develop techniques and ways. It's like when you meditate, right? The goal of meditation, or the goal of the techniques that we practice rather, is to keep bringing our mind back whatever we are practicing upon, the breath, a mantra, a candle flame, a word, a sound, to keep bringing it back to that, so that ultimately, eventually, we may actually have that experience of meditation. But that practice is a practice that stays with us in life as well. So in the same way that the mind wanders and then you bring it back, and it wanders and you bring it back. You're in Delhi, the mind, but you bring it back. Next thing you're in New York in the mind, but you bring it back. Next thing the mind is in Paris, you bring it back. Next thing the mind is in your childhood, you bring it back. Next thing the mind is in your future, you bring it back. You just keep bringing it back. In the same way as you move through the world, you know that purity of the truth of who I am. Stay conscious. Stay aware. Stay mindful. And as much as you can, develop just techniques of remembering. So an easy one, for example, every time before you eat or drink anything, every time before you eat or drink, take a moment, go within, thank the divine, of course, and connect. It's a technique. We eat and drink all day long. Otherwise, we forget God, but you give a technique like that. Whenever you're going to take something, just connect before that. Set an alarm on your phone to just click every half hour. Every time it does. Maybe just a light. Every time that light goes, oh yeah, check in. Where are you? Are you in your highest, purest, truest self? Or have you gotten pulled out into something? Slowly, 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 it'll become much more natural to stay in that groove, and you won't need all of the different reminders. Like as we practice meditation for a long time, eventually you get better at holding the mind in one place. But so do whatever you need to do, because we have to move through the world. It's not about living in a cave. It's about living in the world. Different sort of jungle. And so just develop techniques. If you've got a friend, someone who you're close to, share with that person. Have sort of daily check-ins. How was today? And every morning, reconnect and recommit. And every evening, check in. You know, Puja Swamiji always says at the end of the day, check your balance sheet. How many times did I really come from that purest place, and how many times did I not? And then don't feel bad. Neither feel proud nor embarrassed. Either way, give it all to God. Go to sleep. Get up the next day, pray for the strength to stay anchored again. And that's how our lives become meditation. To just keep bringing it back. Bring it back to the purity, back to the purity, back to the purity. And the last piece with this is, have courage. Because your dilemma is not only the wandering mind, but your dilemma is going to be the world trying to pull you and say, you can't get ahead like that. Everybody lies, everybody steals, everybody cheats. You'll fail, you'll lose everything. So you'll actually end up with people trying to tell you, itni seedhi hona nahi chahiye. Thoda sa to karna to padta hai. And this is where you need to have the courage to say no. Mujhe nahi karna. Even if it means I don't become the CEO of the company, or even if it means that my company doesn't necessarily become Fortune 500. It's worth it. because I've won the real lottery. If at the end of the day I can go to sleep without a sleeping pill or a couple of shots of something, you've won the life lottery. You've won something and earned something much, much more valuable than what you get by losing yourself to get ahead.